All right, good evening, everyone. Starting tonight's School District 25 board meeting. It is Thursday, February 24th, 2022. It is 7:08 p.m. and we already have a motion to be in open session, so I will, Madam Secretary, if you will mark the roll. Let's go right, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. All right, good evening. I think we begin tonight with some recognition, which is always good, and presentation. So we have some recognition for the district spelling bee participants.
Dr. Fitzpatrick is going to share that information with you.
Good, because I stink at pronouncing last names.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to recognize some wonderful individuals from our district. It's with great pleasure that I introduce the top middle school spellers in Arlington Heights. These 6 exceptional students earned the top 3 spots at their school level spelling bee competition, moving on to compete at our district level spelling bee. So I would like to recognize those individuals that are here, and including some that weren't able to make it. So starting off from South, we have Tyler Clark, Rosemary Heckard. Come on up, Rosemary. A little something for you. Can you come over here and just stand here? Orrin Whiting. And then from Thomas Middle School, we recognize Vishnu Adiga. We have Haritha Jugadisan Suganya. Congratulations. And lastly, the champion of the district spelling bee, Grace Chen. So, Grace is not done yet. She will represent our district in the 12th annual North Cook ISC Scripps Spelling Bee at Gemini Middle School in Niles on March 9th. So let's all wish her luck representing District 25. Congratulations. You guys can have a seat. Did you get pictures? On to pictures.
Thank you, Dr. Fitzpatrick. I just want to say to the families and the board, not only were these great spellers, they were amazingly poised in a very tense situation, but most importantly, they were incredibly kind to each other. They celebrated each other, they comforted each other at the end, they all went and found each other, and really just how well they interacted with each other was extremely heartwarming, and I was very proud to be a superintendent and being reminded what great people our students are. So thank you, parents, for sharing them with us, and congratulations to you as well.
All right, thank you. So for our great spellers and their families, you are welcome to stay if you'd like to experience a school board meeting. They're quite exciting. But if not, you're free to go home. Yeah. All right, now we'll move on to community input. I have a little script to read here. So the opportunity to speak to the board is provided for members of the public who have a comment to make about the business of the board. The board appreciates hearing from stakeholders and values your thoughts and questions. As the board strives to make the best decisions for the district, public input can be helpful. In order for the board to reserve sufficient time to conduct its business and to operate this meeting, in the spirit of civility and decorum, speakers are expected to adhere to the following guidelines. Address the board only at the time provided on the agenda and only after being recognized by the board president. 2, identify yourselves and be brief. Your comments must be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board may shorten this allotted time in order to conserve time to allow a maximum number of people the opportunity to speak. Number 3, please be respectful and courteous. The board requests that you not make statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. Just to note, the board typically does not respond to comments or attempt to answer questions during this portion of the public comment portion period, but we do listen intently and appreciate the information from our community. All right. Let's hear from Leah Ross.
Hi. This is different to me. Do I sit? Okay. Okay. I really came here tonight to say thank you. Thank you for your swift action. So many districts around us didn't move as swiftly as you did to pivot, and some still haven't. Thank you for understanding that Governor Pritzker was violating our due process. Thank you for acknowledging the urgent need for so many children and teachers to move to mask optional. It's beyond time and past due, but the healing has begun. I've seen it in the faces of my own 4 children and many others as I drop off at 3 different schools every day and volunteer weekly at Windsor leading a book group. This balanced and rational approach without judgment is the only way. Waiting for an end to COVID mitigations based on guidelines or feelings would have left us in a perpetual land of imposing controls that have never been proven to work in the first place. Health guidelines are not intended to be mandates forced upon all. Families must always have the autonomy to make these applications, as feelings of comfort and risk assessment will always be relative to each family's individual truths and circumstances. And without a concrete measure of these specific controls working, how would we ever have had an off-ramp for them? We didn't have one. We wouldn't have ever had one. Parents, lawyers, judges, and our state legislature built us our off-ramp, and I'm so thankful that you, as our district leaders, chose to immediately take it. Choice for families to decide what's best for their children has been the way since the beginning. We now understand so much more about kids in COVID, transmission in schools, and the very harmful consequences of masking and or excluding learners during critical years. We will never all agree on one path or one truth. No one kind of parental perspective has a monopoly on worry, and nobody can demand a school district's administrators and teachers transform into full-time health officials. Thank you for letting these controls dissolve into a history that we will never forget. Viruses aren't gone, COVID isn't gone, but we have lived among viruses and their potential for complications forever, and we'll have to persevere. Maintaining mental and physical health is a priority of every parent, and we all go about this in different ways. The many and varied choices to help keep our families healthy are all still there for the taking. Attempting to control public health with sweeping mandates and one-size-fits-all rules does not work, and no longer means we exclude healthy children, track and report cases, force masking, and cancel important events in our children's lives. Particularly, I want to say thank you for allowing the middle school kids to attend sporting events again. Administrators should never have been herding healthy children away from their schools, as if they represent not only inconvenience to adults, but hidden and dangerous disease. Any time that you sent them away, they spent with friends anyway, and they also went over to the high schools to watch games in full stadiums. This is one of many absurd rationales that must never drive policy again. So thank you. To conclude, thank you for leading the way back to normalcy, and thank you also in advance for ensuring that we continue this forward progress without judgment and with a goal to understand and respect each other's choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Karen Wolf is next.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see what some of you look like. Well, you know, it's a choice, though. That's the nice thing about it. So it's nice to be able to see those who want to make that choice, to be able to have it, I guess is what I was saying. So anyway, good to see you all. Okay, I have just a couple quick points today. First, I do want to thank all of you for dropping the mandates following the court ruling. I know myself and so many others are overjoyed at this option that we now have. I can't help but wonder, though, why did it take so long? So parents have been telling you for months that we would stand by you if you stood up for our kids, and unfortunately it took a court order. Because of that, I'm left a little bit concerned that some in the district might jump at the first perceived opportunity to re-implement the mandates, and I really hope that doesn't happen, and instead we just let our kids breathe and be free. The dashboard numbers are looking really good, and that's something we can celebrate. I think we can all be glad the numbers are good. our kids can breathe and not worry about getting excluded from school because they might have been exposed to someone who might be sick. Healthy until proven sick, just as with any other cold or flu virus. Secondly, at the same time we were saying that we felt that the board and the district was acting unlawfully and violating student rights, the district lawyers stood up here and said the exact opposite. They stood here claiming that the executive orders and the mandates were the supreme law of the land. Many of us knew that wasn't true, and we voiced it over and over again. So now we have the judge's ruling to quash any argument that they were correct. So we know the lawyers advised you to follow those things, and we also know in some cases they intimidated or even threatened you to follow the mandates. In light of that, I personally believe the board should discuss whether this is the law firm that should represent our district. At the very least, I believe they don't understand the law. At the very worst, they intentionally misled and lied to you and all the members of this community. I believe our district needs representation from the superintendent's office to the school board to the principals and even the law firm that will put the children first, always, without exception. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Karen. Next is Joshua Alvarado.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Joshua Alvarado. Our schools and families here in our communities do not belong to Springfield. We as parents in our communities know what is best for our children, and we do not want critical race theory, social emotional learning, inclusion, social justice, or whatever name it's being hidden behind this week. I know if I was taught this toxic mentality as a child, I would have never grown up to succeed. I would have never gotten this far in my life. I wouldn't be a sergeant first class retired from the U.S. Army that is now running for Illinois Senate. If I was taught this, that I could not succeed and that I was born with disadvantage because of the color of my skin, I would have not done anything that I've done in my life. I would have grown up feeling bad for myself and thinking that others held me down for no reason. This is not a good or healthy way to live. Our communities demand that our schools and teachers concentrate on teaching reading, writing, and STEM so that when our kids are grown, they can work to make our once great state a place that our grandkids can grow up and not a place that we want to run away from. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Joshua. Stacy Esposito is next.
Hello. Okay. I'm just going to share a story about my eldest that is at Thomas Middle School. When the mask mandate was dropped to mask optional, I thought my 8th grader was tolerating wearing a mask to school. He never complained once or talked about it. That all changed when Thomas went mask optional. The night before, he had back-to-school jitters. As we were talking, he was telling me how much the mask hurt his ears and how it was hard for him to breathe, and I had no idea. He just trucked along the way that he always does. He is on the autism spectrum, and so schedule and structure are very important to him. So when I told him that the mask may go back the next day, the following day, because we did not know, I had to tell him that. So every day he would be like, "Do I have to put my mask on?" And I'm like, "No." And then he'd be like, "Yay!" And he'd smile and go off to school. Every morning, like I said, he was so happy when I told him he did not have to wear it. I received an email from his resource teacher stating he was socializing with everyone in the hall, which he was not previously doing, and he even, oh my gosh, hugged, God forbid, a girl in his class. And he is a hugger, so if anybody knows my Drew, he's a hugger. And for him not to hug people probably was just so hard for him, but he did. He hugged right away. He must have been missing that sense of normalcy that he has not had since COVID. My son has lost 2 years of normal interactions with his peers, and for a child that has hard time reading social cues, facial expressions, the masks were detrimental. He has regressed socially and communicatively with his peers. For a kid who is not in sports or other activities, school is his source for social activity. So the removing of this mask has helped him so much, and it's only been 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So I'm hoping we don't go back down that path. I also wanted to just discuss lunch with you guys. He gets 20 minutes to eat. For a child that is 5'9" and 120 pounds, he basically had to size down his lunch because he did not have enough time to eat, and so he was throwing basically half of it out. So I would like to, hopefully we can get back to some form of 40 minutes of lunch so that they can socialize and, you know, he has enough time to actually eat his lunch properly. I just wanted to just share my story. It's not about physical health, it's also about mental health, and I hope that we can keep this choice for all parents to make the choice for their children. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Next, we have Kristin Kyle.
Hi, good evening. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to all the board members for their commitment to our school over the last 2 years. The number of hours you've spent engaging with the community and attending meetings has gone above and beyond what you thought you were volunteering for. So to you, I say thank you. Also, I want to say thank you to District 25 for the way you handled the TRO. All over the news and the social media, we saw the disruption and the community anger that families rightfully had when their students and their schools decided not to uphold the TRO and give their students the choice. I've heard from both of my kids, a 7th grader and a high school senior, that students and teachers were respectful of each other and their classmates, and while the transition is a very slow process, I think we're really moving in the right direction, giving our students the environment they feel comfortable with the choice. What Lori said about the spelling bee students can be said about all District 25 students. They are respectful. They do respect each other. They've learned how some people don't want to wear their masks, some people want to wear their masks. They've learned that the people on the left side of the room can feel comfortable without their masks on. Right side, they like to keep their masks off. They've learned to adapt to this environment, and I think really giving them this choice and putting it back in their hands gives them a sense of pride. My son came home and said he saw someone smile the other day. He's been at South for 2.5 years. He's never seen this person's face before. I never thought that he would come home and say that to me. Because District 25's tagline is "It's personal," I just want to share that our family's been through a lot over the last 2 years, as I'm sure each of the 4,000 families that we serve have been. Everyone has their own story. Our story is my husband has leukemia. The minute that this COVID hit, we had to isolate our children because we didn't know if they could bring something into the house and endanger my husband. And that was extremely hard. But then we adjusted, we adapted. We learned ways to let them out of the house, see their friends, see their girlfriend. That my son wasn't able to see his girlfriend for 2.5 months because the mom was an essential worker. Everyone had to adapt in their own way. Everyone has their own personal story. We really need to put this back into the parents' hands to find that story for their children. So by giving the choice back to us and allowing our children to make these choices, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristin. Oh, we got a double one here. Audrey Corcoran and Gretchen Eckert. You guys are going to talk at the same time, are you? I'm just kidding.
Hi. Hi, I'm Audrey Corcoran. And I'm Gretchen Heckard from Dryden Elementary School. We want to make a quick shout out to the school board and Dr. Vine for making masks optional. I'm glad we don't have to wear masks because I can see my friends. I can understand how they feel and not wonder if they think my joke was funny. More people have their masks off than before, but no one really cares who wears one or not. No one in my class gets bullied for their choice. That's good.
There is a small problem, though. Some people at school are super strict about distancing, but I'm confused because my mom told me the letter from Dr. Vine said distance as best as possible and no contact tracing. There's not a 6 feet or a 3 feet on there, and it doesn't say we have to. So what is the real rule? I try not to get in trouble, but it's hard when you don't know what the rules are. I am excited for all the 5th grade events this year. I'm even happier that they are all in person. When I came to Dryden in 2020, that's when shutdown happened. This is my first normalish year, so thank you for that.
I'm graduating this June and going to South next year. I want to watch a game there, so I know how hard it is, but I heard I can't go. Can you please change that? It sounds really fun.
There's also something else I want to say from my 3rd grade sister's perspective. I'm really happy masks are optional, and I'm not worried about being quarantined, just because I sit next to my friend. Me and my sister and brother are very thankful of your decision. So
thank you. Oh, thank you so very much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, girls. Heidi Steineck? Did I say it right? Let's see.
So, February was a huge month for so many of us who have been relentlessly fighting for choice for our children. On February 4th, a temporary restraining order was issued on Pritzker's mask mandate. And then on February 15th, JCAR ruled against extending the mask mandate. On February 17th, further validation. Oops.
There we go.
Thanks. When Pritzker's appeal was denied. And finally, this Monday, February 28th, Pritzker is lifting the mask mandate altogether because it's time, it's safe, and it's the right thing to do. So this is great, right? We got what we were fighting for. We got choice. So why doesn't it feel great? I keep asking myself this, and here's my answer. Because while the mask mandate has technically been lifted, there's a psychological mandate strongly still in place. The real message is loud and clear. You must keep wearing your mask if you want to continue to be considered a good, selfless, caring, responsible person. And if you choose not to wear a mask, well then, you are none of those things. So you see, by choosing not to mask, you are automatically and undeservingly labeled as uncaring, unkind, irresponsible, and unsafe. That doesn't seem like much of a choice, does it? It's no wonder why so many continue to hold on to their masks longer than they really want to, and for reasons completely unrelated to COVID safety concerns. For many, it's going to take a while to unravel the psychological attachment to masks. The negative connotations that come with unmasking need to be removed immediately. This mentality needs to stop if we want everyone to heal. It is safe to unmask. It is 100% okay to unmask. It's legal to unmask. You are still a good person if you choose to unmask. It is now our job collectively, Dr. Vine, parents, school board, teachers, and our entire community to communicate to our children and to everyone that choice is just that. It's choice. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's a choice. It's a gift and it's a right. Masks are optional, and we are all given the same green light to move forward safely with or without a mask. Let's come together and rejoice in choice and get back to normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Next is Carrie Hood.
Okay. I'm Carrie Hood, and entourage here. My kids go to Ivy Hill, and they just wanted to come and say,
Thank you for letting us have choice.
Thank you for letting us have choice. I choose not to wear a mask, and none of my friends insult me for it.
thank you.
Thank you. Was one of those Max Hood, I assume? Okay. He had his own card. All right. Mary Ann Zielinski. And Amelia. They had separate cards too, so they're coming up together.
Hello, my name is Amelia. I'm thankful I do not have to wear a mask because now I can breathe and sometimes my mask would get hot. I'm happy because I can breathe and see my friends smile. It's okay that someone is wearing a mask. You don't always have to, but sometimes you can. If you're sick, you should stay home so you can get better and rest. I hope everyone comes to school so everyone will be together. Thank you.
I wrote what I wanted to say, but I think I'm just going to go off script. I'm going to share our story. Part of the reason I've been coming to these meetings for the last year and a half is because my husband and I moved where we did because we want to use District 25 schools. I've been saying that from the beginning. And, you know, one of the hardest things for me is that my daughter started school without knowing what a normal experience really is. I never talked about this with my kid, although some people probably would think that, oh, you know, these parents, these brainwashed conspiracy theory, whatever people call us, domestic terrorists, right? That we probably go home and we brainwash our own kids and we talk about this. No, I never did. I never asked her what she thought. She did exactly what I asked her to do every single day, which was put on a mask, right? And it wasn't until a couple weeks ago when I told her that we don't have to wear them anymore. And do you remember what you said?
I forgot.
Yeah, it's okay. She told me, she's like, I'm happy. And I said, you are? And she said, yeah, because I can breathe. And it just, you know, it just hit me in a way that I was like, I've never asked her what she thought or how she felt. And, you know, I'm just glad that we have this choice. So thank you for all that you guys have been through. I understand that this has been absolutely hard on you as well. But I'm glad that, you know, you were quick to make the decisions you did. A lot of the schools around here have dealt with turmoil because of their choosing not to acknowledge the TRO and acknowledge that these laws or mandates were never laws. And that was kind of what I wanted to touch upon here, which is these mandates aren't laws, guys. We've been saying that from the beginning. Let's never do this again, please. Please make sure that we put kids first in this district so I can bring my little ones here. Okay? Thanks. That's it.
Thank you. Samantha Pilanthronins.
Hello. Good evening, my name is Samantha. I'm in 2nd grade at Ivy Hill Elementary School. I would like to say thank you for allowing choices to wear a mask at school. My friends have all made different choices, and that is okay. I still want to learn and play with them. We can all have different opinions and still be kind and respectful. I am so happy to be at school. I appreciate you all. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, Samantha. That's all of them, Lana. All right. All right. Moving on to, where are we at here? Oh, consent agenda. I need a motion.
Mr. President,
Yes, Anisha.
I recommend that the Board of Education approve those items on the consent agenda as follows. A, personnel report and addendum to the personnel report. B, treasurer's report. C, invoices. D, fixed asset disposal report. E, regular and closed session meeting minutes of January 20th, 2022. F, special committee of the whole kindergarten meeting and closed session meeting minutes of February 3rd, 2022. Hold closed session minutes of July 15, 21 through December 31st, 21 per board policy 2-220, and hold audio tapes January 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2020 per board policy 2-220.
Thank you, Anisha. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'm going to keep this in my place here. Oh, let's start the voting. Lana, do you have a? Thank you, Greg. Sorry. Lana?
Yeah, just
Okay,
change
good.
that.
Let's start down.
Yes. Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, vote passes 5-0. On to communications to and from board. Oh, geez,
I will do my best to make it speedy. So with the passing of the consent agenda, we are very excited to welcome a new staff member into our administrative group. I'd like to bring up our new Student Services Coordinator, Annette Peebles. Congratulations. We're very excited. We have a small token of appreciation that I'd like to hand to you. And then I see you brought 3 special guests with you this evening. Husband Matt, welcome. And 2 children, Declan and Charlotte. Is that correct? Did I do right? All right, good. I am going to give you a gift. It's a fidget because Mom is going to spend a lot of time working. And you guys may be trying to get her attention, and this may help alleviate some of that pressure. Small gifts for you guys as well. And Matt, you're not going home alone. I anticipate you may be making more dinners now that she is working as an administrator with us as well. So congratulations. Annette, great to have you here. Yeah, you're very welcome.
Welcome. All right, now. And yes, as always with people that come for recognition, you're welcome to stay and experience the fun of a board meeting, but if not, go enjoy your fidgets. All right, now on to communications to and from board members. For NSSEO, I know Gina's running late and or may not be here.
She is en route, but I think we can go past that.
Move forward to IASB with Nisha Ishmael-Patel.
Thank you, Mr. President. ISB, as always, is really committed to make sure that board members go through professional development continually. And a couple of us participated in some conversations this week. There's a book club on the book Crucial Conversations. So that was really, we had our first meeting and really talking about the importance of creating an open culture like we have in District 25, where different people can share their perspectives. And diversity of thought is welcome, and we saw that today, and we always want to be sure that we maintain crucial conversations and make it a safe space for everybody. There was another ISB conversation this week about unconscious bias and implicit bias, which was also excellent, really talking about the importance of courageous conversations, empathy again, and the importance of listening to each other. And on March 2nd, Dr. Ayala, who is the Illinois State Board of Education Superintendent, is going to be having a conversation around the equity journey continuum as an informational tool to help districts view data through a DEI lens, which will be helpful to us as board members who are making sure that we provide the best education for all our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Anisha. Now we'll move on to Ed Red. Hear from Rich or Stacy.
So this past, or February 11th, we had our monthly Red meeting, and obviously the major topic at that time was the effects of the TRO and things of that nature. So I won't bore you with it because some of the discussion has already become null and void as we've worked through that. But there are some other legislative actions that do have some bearing on us. One is Senate Bill 3914 that actually was amended just last week. What this would do would be to add 5 additional sick leave days, mental health days for teachers. But with the amendment, they said that now to really add that as a reason for using sick leave. So before the amendment, it was just that we would add 5 more days where a teacher could use as a mental health day, very similar to what students can do. But with the amendment, they're tacking that on too. So as a reasonable use of sick leave can now be for a mental health day as well. One of the others talks about House Bill 3296 from downstate. One of the ones that this is just starting to make its way through requires that school districts offer a program to prepare students enrolled in grades 6 through 12 for career and technical education. So again, really the House bill extends all the way through senior year in high school, but obviously starting at 6th grade causes us to probably have to think about our programming if that eventually passes through that. The other major issue, or not, again, issue is the wrong words, but the other one that is surfacing, as you know, we've talked about House Bill 2778, which would be for leave or paid COVID-19 leave for teachers and administrators and in all sorts of school districts, community colleges. That had been passed into law. Governor Pritzker had vetoed it and then went back down into the legislature. So what has happened is now we have a new House Bill 1167 is now the new version of that. It's basically the same particular law with 2 important caveats. One, it emphasizes that all teachers and administrators would need to be fully vaccinated, and then it clarifies that fully vaccinated does not mean a 2-shot. It means whatever the CDC is saying is fully vaccinated. So if it's now a booster shot or 2 booster shots or whatever, it's going to be that particular piece. So again, it's just being percolated, worked about, but if that passes again, then right now it's saying it would be retroactive for the full school year starting in, obviously in 21 and then going to the end of this school particular year. So that's really the extent of the excitement on the Ed Red front.
All right, thank you, Rich. Since President Philippik is out, I'm going to forego the item number D, and I'm not going to read a board governance framework. You guys all get 10 minutes of your life back. Moving on to E, are there any other board communications not on the agenda that anybody has this evening?
Mr. President, nothing, but I'll bring it up during the enrollment study. That some of us did visit. We visited Thomas and Westgate, so I think it has some bearing into the enrollment report. So I'll bear into that point. Correct.
Okay. Then let's move on to item number. Oh, did you have something?
I did. So many great things happening in our district. So when it comes to other board communication, it's always good to share. I'll tack on to what Rich said. It was great to be in the buildings this week. We were at Thomas Middle School and Westgate, and actually I was at South Middle School as well, and I happened to be there at lunchtime and also watching the Battle of the Books practice. It was really great to be at lunch and seeing everything progress so well in the buildings. And I also wanted to say that this week District 214 held a great conversation, and so as a board member we were invited to attend, so I attended a conversation about courageous conversations that District 214's Director of Diversity is kind of embarking on. So it was good to see what our students will be transitioning to at the high school. So that was a helpful conversation. And I also want to say that I wanted to recognize that in the last few weeks, our community here, being February, our community enjoyed Chinese New Year, World Hijab Day, and February is also Black History Month. And so throughout the year, there are many acknowledgments recognizing the beauty of our diversity. And these occasions serve as a reminder to renew a commitment to inclusion of diverse perspectives. And as we wrap up Black History Month, it's a good time for us to recognize our district's efforts. It's an even more important moment to recharge our energy. And in July 2020, our board listened as our superintendent, Dr. Bine, read out loud a resolution affirming District 25's commitment to eliminating racial injustice. And our board adopted this resolution unanimously, and our superintendent has framed this resolution on her office wall. So I think it's a true testament to the caliber of our district that even with the challenges of a global pandemic, our staff and families have forged forward in doing excellent work and launching an equity-focused strategic plan. And so, of course, there's undoubtedly a lot of work to do, but as we wrap up Black History Month, I wanted to acknowledge the district's work. And this month and the days and years to come, it's truly an honor to be on this journey with such a compassionate learning community. So thank you, and I wanted to be sure I acknowledge that, especially as we wrap up Black History Month.
Thank you, Anisha.
Mr. Vice President, I just want to tag on, thank you, Anisha, for that reflection. And there was one word that stood out, and I just want to highlight it, is that we're all on a journey with this. There's no arrival point. Even if we make a statement or implement a plan, we're always looking to improve and grow in so many areas, but that one especially. So thank you.
Thanks, Greg. All right. On to agenda item number 7, communications to board members. Do we have anyone from PTA? Nicole? There she is.
Okay. Yeah, green screen, yeah. Get Adam out of there. Okay. Windsor Elementary PTA was one of 30 units that applied for the National PTA Family Engagement Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Grant, and Windsor PTA was chosen. And they received a $500 grant to fund and enhance their DEI practices within their school. So way to go, Windsor. And I have some scholarship news for AHC. So if you or someone you know is a senior in high school and has spent at least 3 years in District 25, please visit the AHC website for a senior scholarship application, or visit your high school guidance counselor's office for more information on applying. All high school scholarship applications are due by February 27th, 2022, so that's coming up. 9 lucky recipients will be receiving a $1,000 scholarship in the spring for college. And in addition to that, AHC is also inviting District 25 students in grades K through 8 to enter our elementary level scholarship contest. This year's contest is called Spark the Park. Participants will put their creative minds to work and come up with one spark that they would want to see at each of the parks in Arlington Heights. A spark may be a new swing, slide, garden, hammocks. The possibilities are endless. The application includes written response questions and an artwork submission. 10 winners will be chosen, and winners will each receive a $100 Arlington Heights Park District gift card. To submit an entry, visit your school's PTA website or ahcpta.org to find the link to the application. Contest submissions are due on or before March 1st. Winners will be notified by March 11th. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, ABC 25, Gina Faso is still out, so we'll forego that communication, and we'll move on to ATA. I believe I saw Allison Berg in a Greenbrier shirt, but we'll figure that out later.
Hey, I never miss an opportunity to talk. Are you kidding? And I am in a Greenbrier shirt, although I just did a little air pump for Windsor. Woohoo, PTA back there, because I'm also part of Windsor. But good evening. I would like to just throw a shout out to the District 25 teachers who continue to be flexible in the ever-changing rules of the pandemic. Since we have gone mask optional, teachers have done an excellent job of leading by example by being kind and respectful of both kids' and colleagues' personal choices. Kindness and compassion are traits that District 25 teachers spend a lot of time discussing in their classrooms, and this pandemic has offered a very teachable moment to be kind to one another. Moving on to shine my spotlight on Greenbrier tonight. I am an honorary Greenbrier teacher tonight, and I would like to shine that spotlight on Greenbrier this month. Greenbrier is an amazing school for many reasons, but it is especially unique as it houses our early childhood program. Early childhood students have been very busy learning about winter, snow, and all the fun things that go along with it. Some classrooms did a science experiment to make their own indoor snow to play with. Many classrooms have been learning about music and instruments. Students and teachers brought in instruments from home for everyone to try. Students made their own instrument, maracas, shaky eggs, and rain sticks, and learned that sheet music is instructions you can use to play a song. Students used our ever-famous boom whackers to hand sheet music to play Mary Had a Little Lamb together, and it was fun, and the kids were so proud of themselves. Some parents and grandparents zoomed in to play instruments for the class. Another classroom explored a variety of instruments, including guitar, rhythm sticks, a drum, and a keyboard that were borrowed from the Library of Things at the Arlington Heights Memorial Library. Early childhood students are now busy with curriculum studies, including roads, building, and pets, and some early childhood classrooms have changed their dramatic play area into a pet hospital, which I believe you're going to see pictures of behind me, into a pet hospital, and are now pretending to be vets to take care of animals. Imagination, creativity, and learning are fun and abundant in early childhood. Some other happenings that you saw in the slideshow included the Global Day of Play, students getting the chance to explore leader opportunities, having fun with coding, and Greenbrier's awesome fifth graders quite literally glowing while they learn. A quick sidebar that I saw on Twitter, and maybe you did too, the parents of Greenbrier School threw a parade for their teachers as a show of support, and that was really awesome. It was on, I saw it on Twitter, everyone I know shared it on Twitter, so I'm sure you've seen it, and it's not in the slideshow, but it was worthy of a quick shout out that's just an awesome show of support for the teachers over there. So thank you for the opportunity tonight to chat about Greenbrier. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if I could add something.
Sure.
Allison reminded me of something. This is also, as we celebrate so much this month, this is also Public Education Week, right? Public Schools Week. And our teachers are part of 3.2 million teachers nationally that educate about 50 million students in the U.S. With 100,000 public schools. I read that on Twitter as well, Allison. We get a lot of facts. And there's 14,000 school districts that public schools support across the country. So that means there's 14,000 boards of education as well. So kudos to all our teachers for the phenomenal public school education they provide.
Thank you. Stats even, I like it. Rich was like, where's the pie charts? Yeah, that worked. I said both of us were like, whoa, look at us. All right. We're moving on to student learning. Dr. Becky Fitzpatrick and company.
Yeah.
Good evening. All right, well, continuing on with the theme of stats, we're here to update the board on assessment. So I'm here tonight with our assessment coordinator, Amanda Chernick, to review our students' performance on 2 assessments. Later in the presentation, I will share information about 2 more strategies we are using in District 25 to advance student achievement growth. Last year, our kindergartners were assessed using the state-mandated Kindergarten Individual Development Survey, or KIDS. And this winter, all of our kindergarten through 8th graders took the NWEA Measures of Academic Progress, or MAP test. KIDS is a state-mandated assessment and focuses on the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that most impact long-term student success in 3 developmental areas: social and emotional development, language and literacy development, and math. Kids' observational data is typically collected during the first 60 days of the school year. However, last year, data collection time was extended until April due to disrupted in-person learning across the state. Therefore, ISBE has provided a disclaimer associated with interpreting this particular data set. And they have indicated, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, for the school year 2021, kids' data was collected across the entire school year. Therefore, data cannot be used to indicate students' readiness for kindergarten. And finally, student kids' data will look inflated this year because of this extended window. If you think about our kindergartners having many more months of time to learn and develop, that's why we are seeing those higher scores. I'm now going to turn it over to Mrs. Chernick.
Good evening. So I would like to get started by sharing our kids' assessment pre-pandemic performance during the first 60 days of school for the 2019-2020 school year versus pandemic performance over the course of 7 months of the 2021 school year. So District 25 kindergartners continue to trend well above state averages. As you can see by the 2 different assessment windows, our kindergartners show a great deal of growth during the course of the school year in social emotional development, literacy development, and math. It's important to note that the 2021-2022 student performance will likely show a decline next year compared to the last school year with the return to the 60-day window of data collection.
So presented here is NWEA's research findings about nationwide academic performance on their MAP platform over the fall 2021 window. On average, national student growth between pre-pandemic, which is fall 2019, and pandemic, fall 2021, was lower compared to typical growth patterns, especially for lower achieving students. Achievement levels nationally continue to lag behind historical averages. Larger declines of 9 to 11 percentile points were seen in math, while declines in reading were 3 to 7 percentile points. Overall, while national achievement was lower for all student groups, historically marginalized students have been disproportionately impacted by interrupted learning.
So this slide here shows our current MAP reading growth. So the winter 2022 growth projections were calculated using the fall 21 to winter 22 data. While all grades demonstrated growth this winter, only 7th grade met its growth projection. Based on pre-pandemic norms, NWEA expects 50% of students to meet their growth projection. This winter, 49% of District 25 students met their reading projection. This slide shows our math growth from fall to winter. Again, all grades are showing growth, but only 7th and 8th grade met their growth projection. This winter, 50% of our students met their math projection, which aligns with NWEA's national target. To gain a better idea of how our grade levels are performing pre-pandemic compared to this year, this graph shows District 25's MAP RIT scores in reading for 2nd through 7th grade in the winter of 2020, which was pre-pandemic, and the winter of 2022. For the first time within the past couple of years, we have data sets that followed standardized testing procedures, so we have a more precise snapshot of how our students are performing. Analysis of our data by an NWEA representative praised the ability of District 25 students to maintain achievement over the last 2 years, which is atypical when compared to other districts. Whoops. There we go. In math, there are similar trends to reading, with RIT scores remaining relatively stable by grade levels from pre-pandemic to today. Again, analysis provided by an NWEA representative shared that despite the pandemic, District 25 continues to demonstrate effective teaching and learning practices. On this slide, we are looking at the change in percentile points and grade levels comparing the 2019-2020 and the 21-22 school year. Nationally, in the fall of 2019 and 2021, 4th through 7th grade students demonstrated an average decline of 5 percentile points in reading. However, over these last 2 school years in the winter of 2020 and 2022, District 25 students demonstrated an average decline of less than 1 percentile point. In math, nationally, in the fall of 2019 and 2021, the 2019 and 2021 school years, 4th through 7th grade students demonstrated an average decline of 10 percentile points in math. Over these 2 school years in the winter of 2020 and 2022, District 25 students demonstrated an average decline of less than 3 percentile points in math. So these next 2 slides show the distribution of District 25 subgroups into NWEA percentile bands coded as high, which that's the blue, average, which is yellow, and low, which is red. Overall, 93% of District 25 students are performing within or above NWEA's average percentile band in reading. Even so, there is discrepancy evident between the subgroups. NWEA research from fall 21 found that historically marginalized students demonstrated greater achievement declines over the past 2 years. It's also important to note that some student population groups in our district are less than 20 students, including American Indian, multiracial, and Pacific Islander, and were excluded from this graph. In math, overall, 94% of District 25 students are performing within or above NWEA's average percentile band in math. Again, discrepancy is noted between subgroups. NWEA research from fall 2021 found that declines in historically marginalized students over the past 2 years were more pronounced in math. The goal is to move students towards the higher percentile band.
So as we previously indicated to the board, we will share a couple of strategies we are employing to advance student achievement and growth at each of these assessment updates throughout this year. This fall and winter, we partnered with NWEA to provide professional learning to our K through 8 staff. In August and October, staff participated in a MAP Growth Basics and Essential Reports training to learn how to further integrate MAP growth reports and data into instruction to support differentiation, scaffolding, and enrichment. During our School Improvement Day on January 3rd, staff participated in a MAP Growth Informing Instruction workshop to learn more about how to design responsive instruction plans using MAP growth results. This fall, we launched an after-school tutoring program focused on math and literacy for K through 8 students. The first round of tutoring consisted of 12 weeks of 45-minute tutoring sessions offered twice a week. 51 students participated and were tutored by 23 certified District 25 staff members. Round 2 will begin at the end of February and wrap up in April. We have already received positive feedback from tutors, families, and buildings, and we will review the growth of these students later in the school year. So to summarize briefly, this winter our students are growing, but not yet to pre-pandemic projections. District 25 is trending above national averages on the MAP assessment by demonstrating less of a decline in percentile points from pre-pandemic testing to current testing. And while the disruption of the pandemic has impacted students differently and is not yet complete, District 25 is fostering continued math and reading growth through targeted additional supports for students and additional professional learning for staff. Any questions?
She's our statistician tonight, playing the role of.
Thank you for the information. Appreciate it. It's good. You know, obviously we have as you've presented here, we have a lot to do to catch up to where we were. So it's good that I think we're making progress, but it's kind of hard to tell within the way you've laid some of the information out. So looking at, if we can go to slide 4.
Oops.
Slide 4, there we go.
Ugh,
Oh,
it's
too
not
far.
holding. Hang on. All right, I clearly don't have the magic touch.
All right, perfect. So I guess looking at this then, if you're saying that, you know, obviously the scores were maybe inflated because of the longer assessment period, where would you expect our scores to be next year when I would assume we're back to a more of a normal type of assessment period? So what should we expect there?
That's really hard to say. I do think that having our kiddos in person this whole year has been obviously very beneficial for their development. It's hard to say with any accuracy, where our students will be next year. We can only hope that they're going to continue to improve. I would imagine our students will be pretty close to where they were in 1920, but again, I can't say with certainty.
So back to that light blue line then?
Yep.
Is that more of the historical trend?
That would be a pre-pandemic
Okay.
number. And again, it's kindergarten readiness, where they are assessed within the first 60 days of the school year.
Okay. So on the next slide, though, on page 5, you talked about the national achievement was lower for all student groups. Historically marginalized students have been disproportionately impacted by interrupted learning. So what's the impact in our district? So I can understand at the national level, what have you seen in our district and how are we addressing that particular piece? Because it's not clear from the other slide, from the previous slide. I mean, it would seem like all our kids are doing great. So what's the impact on our district?
Yeah, I think that's something we're going to continue to look at. Previously, subgroup information was not submitted to NWEA, so beginning this year, we have submitted that information attached to student IDs, so we can now begin to track that information.
Okay.
I was going to say, Rich, I think last time that was noted in our conversation previously. I think that's when they said you guys were submitting it. I just want to make sure I remember because there's a lot of, and I think the other thing that they said in the conversation was, just listening, is that we do expect it to go back to 60. I know she just answered that, but
Yeah.
I did think she addressed that in the conversation.
On slide 6, so, because I know we came up in the Q&A ahead of time, so here we're using fall of 2021 to winter of 2022 data, yet then subsequently we're tracking it against winter before data. So why is the growth, projected against fall of 2021, which we don't have measurements for? Because earlier you said in a Q&A, you said that we don't want to use that data, it's unclear or things of that nature, so that we can show trends, but here we're using that data to demonstrate growth.
Yeah, the issue is that we have periods where we just don't have data. So last year was unusual. We don't have winter data from last year. The students didn't take the MAP assessment in the winter. And then the year before that, we didn't have spring data. So there's just pockets. This is actually the first time we've been able to look at our students in the winter, looking at their growth from fall to winter, because we typically don't administer MAP in the fall. We did last year because it was the pandemic and we didn't have data from that spring prior. So this is kind of new for us. We don't know if this is normal because we've never looked at our fall to winter before, their growth.
This is the first year, correct, Amanda and Becky, that we are doing MAP assessment 3 times a year. So we'll be able to do a fall to winter like we have now. We'll be able to do a winter to spring and even a fall to spring later this spring.
I guess then, looking back at the November assessment, you were able to show progression, again, from spring, fall, to show that progression. So I'm wondering why we're not able to show that here today.
Right. I was pretty excited this winter because it was our first time having clean data sets. So we were able to look at this winter, which was a clean administration, compared to winter 2 years ago, which was pre-pandemic. I felt like this was our first chance to really get a look at how our students have either grown, maintained, lost over the past 2 years. And my concern was if we had a graph with a lot of data points, that would get lost and washed out. So it was a way for us to give a current snapshot of where our students are now and where they were.
No, I understand. Maybe I'm not asking my question. So you're assessing the growth here based on fall.
Yep.
But in the subsequent slides, you're not using fall. You're using December of your winter of 20 as a comparison base, but you're measuring off of fall, but not showing the fall actual stats. Right, so if you go to the next slide, or slide 8.
Well, we showed fall in the fall.
But you're using fall here.
You have to. You need a comparison group.
Right, okay, so if you go to slide 8, right, so 2 slides up, you're comparing against winter of the winter. So why wouldn't we show the progression from fall? That's the part I'm not understanding. If you're using it in one slide,
right,
why can't you show the progression here to show here's what it actually was?
Because the winter, we want to do a season-to-season comparison. If I did a fall comparison, the RIT scores would look really different because RIT scores are going to go up throughout the year. So fall, they're going to be at one level, winter another level, and then spring even a higher level. So it would almost make it look like our students were overly accelerating, right? So it's better to look at a season-to-season with this particular graph because it gives a more accurate snapshot of where those students were at that point in time.
Okay, but we could still see the progression then through the year. If we're focused on, making sure we achieve growth, we could see the progression through the year.
Right, and this is more of a, here's our current performance. That other slide was more of a growth measure.
Okay. Also, you talked, they've got that one, you answered that one. Slide 10. Yeah, 11's fine. So what do you think is the reason for the positiveness on the 6th grade and the negative on the 7th grade? I know you spoke about, overall we're -1, but there's a variability in that 6th and 7th grade.
Sure. Yeah, these are different, these are not the same group of students. So we're looking at, in the 6th grade example, we're looking at 6th graders this year compared to 6th graders 2 years ago. So they're different students. So I don't want to say that one group of student lost a lot or gained a lot. We're just looking at trends, just like NWEA was looking at trends nationally. One example could be that students there were maybe some outliers in the data sets, meaning that some scores were either overly high or overly low. I can't say with any accuracy, but I think what we were looking for was just how we were able to maintain compared to peers nationally.
Okay, and I know we've asked about getting local districts. So how do we make progress on that since
we have a little bit of a difference between our assessment sets. So MAP is a tool that not every district chooses to administer. And even when they do administer it, they don't necessarily administer it all 3 seasons, fall, winter, spring. And that data is also theirs to share or not. Whereas IAR, given that it's state testing, is something that's universally administered. That shows up on our Illinois school report card, so we have the ability to do a comparison on IAR. We lean more into the data that NWEA provides us for MAP analysis.
Just maybe playing more devil's advocate.
Sure.
If understanding that all districts don't, but even if they did a winter and a fall and a spring, we have comparable points. I assume that in other districts they also do assessment updates to their district, so that's all public information. Why wouldn't? And I know, Laura, you speak to the other districts, so why wouldn't we just ask and say, hey, can we see your MAP data?
We do.
Okay.
We do ask all of them whether they provide it to their board or not, right? A lot of them may use MAP, but it's not something they report on. It's something they use internally to make instructional decisions. So when they do utilize MAP and it is public or they are willing to share it, we have it. Right now, we only have 2 other districts that are able to provide that information.
All right, are there any other comments or questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes,
and
Gina?
completely recognizing you may not have this answer at this moment, but considering this past year, as part of the summer curriculum, we offered at no cost to families the ability to participate in the core curriculum, and math and reading would be some of them, versus 2 years ago, the number of students that came through the summer school and then therefore kind of were more prepared. Can we get just a little bit of information to understand if that use of the ESSER funds was a really good use and if that had an impact potentially?
Yeah, so we provided that data in our fall assessment update, correct? Regarding how our students that were specifically in summer school performed.
But it could have had a carryover impact, right? So if the summer school students continue to perform well, right, then the teacher had a better chance of hitting the ground running to introduce new curriculum and continue to grow. So when we're going 2 years ago versus now, if we had half of the 6th graders or the 7th graders or the 8th graders coming through the summer school enrichment program versus a third of them,
yeah,
it could have been an impact into winter testing.
It could. I think our challenge is once the school year starts, we start to have other variables like interventions. Students might be receiving special education services, different differentiation opportunities. I think that would make it difficult to just isolate that.
Completely understood. That's why I said you
Yeah.
may not have the information.
No, I had to
but
think
it's
about it for a
hard.
minute, but yeah, I think really it's because there are all these other additional things happening for
Sure.
our students.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vice President.
Yes, Greg.
Just a couple of quick questions. Dr. Fitzpatrick, the professional learning that was done in the fall, and I apologize, I didn't catch for sure, was that a new professional development activity or one we've done before?
Yeah, so NWE MAP testing has been in the district for a long time. There was professional development that teachers participated in some number of years ago. It predates my being in the district, so we'll say, call it at least 10 years. So this would have been a new opportunity for many of our teachers, just to really kind of refine their ability to use this data to inform instruction and provide differentiation.
And was it optional or built into a professional development?
All of our teachers participated in the training K through 8.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and then with the tutoring, if you could just a little more about like when does it happen? How are kids identified? What's our capacity? Like, are we near capacity? We're good, or
sure,
those kind of things.
Yeah. So the tutoring happened after school. This would be a great opportunity to give some credit to our RTI MTSS coordinator, Andrea Lusso, who did a considerable amount of work, not only to work with school teams to identify students, but also to recruit teachers who would be willing to tutor after full days of teaching. And as I said, we had 23 certified teachers in the district that stepped up to do that tutoring. As I said, school teams were really behind identifying students. It came up through our RTI process. So as we've talked about before, 3 times a year, our teams get together to discuss students, talk about needs, identify opportunities to provide additional supports, this being one of those options.
And so capacity-wise, is it we just try and meet the need? Is that kind of
Yeah, thinking about Andrea's effort, we did kind of a first round to gather up teachers that would be willing. As additional students were brought forth, she went back out to seek individuals that would provide the tutoring. So she's in the midst now of recruiting for this next round of tutoring.
And I think I know the answer, but I just want to make it explicit. There's no cost to this.
There is no cost.
Thank you.
Correct. So it's 90 minutes of tutoring for 12 weeks for students.
Go ahead.
Jed? Oh, Anisha?
Oh, Mr. Vice President?
Yes.
Amanda, thanks for going over this and all the work that you've done to put this together. It was very clear in what you were communicating to us, so I appreciate it. We appreciate it as a board. I do have a question. You know, the slide that you had indicated where there was discrepancy between subgroups, the student subgroups. Can you go over, once again, you had mentioned differentiation and the tutoring. So are those some of the strategies being used to support those students with the discrepancy of the subgroups?
I can even maybe speak to that a little bit in terms of, I think when we really start to look at this information, we're really looking at it kind of granular, looking at individual students and really taking a look at what opportunities they're involved in. So not necessarily taking a subgroup and saying, okay, this is what this subgroup needs, but really at that point, we're really talking about individual needs. Those school teams are really talking about those kids and their particular areas for growth, and then just trying to match interventions in that manner.
Okay, no, thanks, Dr. Fitzpatrick. And it's a really important awareness point just to have that even out there and to think about strategies. And you answered it even more importantly, the differentiating per student and what that student needs. So thank you for that. And I wonder if a part of it is the importance of culturally relevant teaching to make sure that those students' needs are being met because you did define the different subgroups. So thank you for that.
Just one point, just to make sure I'm understanding, because I know I'm a little slow at times, so I'm sorry. But with the MAP test, with MAP, it technically is a requirement that we don't have to participate in it. But for the standardized testing, we have to participate, but kids can actually opt out of standardized testing, correct? I'm just making sure I understand, like for MAP and why we do it, right? Just because I think it's really more for the public from the perspective.
Yeah.
We've heard, we talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
And standardized testing is what's on the report cards that you get when you
Yep.
go out to your website.
Yep.
MAP is something we're using internally to judge our measurements and our metrics and our educational opportunities that we're doing within the district, as opposed to the standardized testing is, hey, this is standardized across the state, everybody's taking this, and then this is where we quote-unquote rank. And then when you go to that website, that's what you're looking at, as opposed to this is really talking about to measure how we're delivering the education. I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding that, because I think we talk in different, and Rich is asking a lot of questions, and I'm trying to make sure I'm wrapping my head around all of it, because there's the standardized testing, there's the MAP testing, and why we do one and to compare to the other. Just, I think it would be helpful for me to understand, but I think it's good for the just general population to understand.
Two things I'll share. With the state testing, I think one piece that we look at is the fact that we don't get those scores back until typically the next academic school year. So it doesn't give us much opportunity to use those data points to really provide that responsive instruction, whereas the information that we get from the MAP is much more robust in terms of we can really drill down into specific areas within content to determine, across reading, there's many components to reading instruction. What are those specific areas that groups of students need acceleration or remediation in? And then we can also do that for individual students. So they each hold a certain value. Again, that IAR allows us, as you said, to compare ourselves against other districts across the state. But really, especially during this time when we really need to be very sensitive to accelerating that growth, it's important that we get more information back on a regular basis that's usable information for our teachers.
Thank you. I think that's just helpful to understand, like this is the real-time data versus the year later, which you're then measuring over the time. Okay,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
All right.
Mr. Vice President, just two real quick questions.
Two more questions,
Sorry.
Rich.
Yep. Same on this slide 12 and 13. You stated that there's some percentage of our districts exceed the average percentage. So what were those stats again for 12 and 13?
So, I'm sorry, what stats do you want? How many,
It's not on the slide, but you said a number, a percentage.
So, for reading, let me look at my script here, sorry. I think it's 93%. So what that means, so reading is 93%. Let me go back here. That's overall for the entire district.
And what's
And what
the-
that means is that students who are in the yellow and blue.
So then because you said against the NWEA average
Right.
percentage, so the average percentage is like, if I'm looking at that overall, just so I understand, is.
I said within the, wait, where is it? Within or above. Yep.
Within or above, so that's both, because I thought NWEA.
Yep, so they're both within or above. For reading, it's 93%, and then for math, it's 94%.
Okay. That's really low, okay. And then a final question on just maybe tagging off of what Greg was asking about the tutoring. So 51 students, it's great that we have the 51, but that's less than 1% of the population of our students. Is that something we should be thinking about, or is that normal, not normal? Is that expected, not expected? If we're focusing in on tutoring as being an area that will help move the achievement along, and it's less than 1% of the students.
So we don't have anything to we don't have anything to compare it to because we haven't offered this before. We were actually quite proud of that number.
No, that's what I mean. I don't want to say it's a bad number, but if we're saying it's a tactic or a tactic we're using to make change, we're impacting less than 1%.
And I would say it's one tactic. I think we really have to prioritize in-school support for many of our students. Some of our students don't have the ability to have transportation connected to the tutoring. They have other commitments outside of school. So we really focus our energies on what can we do during the school day. This is then sort of in addition. So we would expect that group, I think, to be a little bit smaller. And some kids, quite frankly, are done at the end of the school day. And an extra 45 minutes of tutoring may not be in their best interest.
So this is an optional that you've given to the parents.
Correct.
To come back and to your point. I think 51 sounds phenomenal from the perspective that's optional, because I'll admit, like, I can imagine us kids going, okay, I'm done, like you said, going home and no more.
Yeah, and some parents said, thank you.
Parents say
but
no, or with all the extracurricular activities, you've got sports, you've got, name 100 things that they do after school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, like Becky referenced, we have math intervention and reading intervention during the day at all of our schools, and so this is an extra opportunity for those families that are able to take advantage of it.
So now today, Rich is rubbing off on me a little bit. I shouldn't sit next to him, maybe. But Dr. Fitzgerald, can you tell me, the way we're looking at it, this is during COVID, correct? This particular slide. Would you say these discrepancies between subgroups look similar pre-COVID? Do you recall? And if you can't answer that question, that's okay. It just occurred to me.
No, it's a great question, but this is, again, the first year that we've had the subgroups embedded within the MAP platform, so we haven't been able to look at it this granularly. So the hope is to keep doing this, and the hope is to see our colors change a little bit too, right, as the year goes on. So I'll be real interested in the spring to see where we end up.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Amanda, because I feel like in my time on the board, this is the first time I'm seeing this kind of aggregated, and it's really important, and it also kind of shows that do we as a learning community have opportunity gaps for our students, and to kind of keep that in mind too. So I'm glad that we're kind of going to be seeing this more. So thanks for bringing that to our awareness.
All right. I think we'll let you off the hook now. Becky, Amanda, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on. There's no reports for student services, business and finance, facilities. Give a couple folks a night off here. Personnel and planning and enrollment report is next on the agenda.
Look at that happy opening slide. Come on now. Enjoy this one. There are 61 more pages to look at. So if you don't like hearing my voice now, just wait. Okay. I don't know if I could last that many slides. All right. So, good evening. I should have brought fidgets for you. You will have plenty to fidget with these numbers. I'd like to thank you in advance for the opportunity to share the demographic trends and enrollment projections report from Dr. Casarda, dated January 2022, revised. Slide 2, the demographic trends and enrollment projections. The enrollment projections are critical for us to get a better understanding of how many students we may look to service in the near future, to provide us with information for our budgets and ensure that we have facility space to service our students and staff. While we know that projecting our future enrollment is often like predicting the weather, we still feel there is strong value in working with a demographer. Dr. John Casarda has a long history of working in Arlington Heights School District 25, assisting us with our enrollment growth and, more recently, the enrollment decline. Dr. Casarda is based out of the University of North Carolina, and he is highly respected as a demographer within the field of education. In addition, he has over 35 years of experience. Slide 3, scope of work. When Dr. Casarda looks at projecting our enrollment data, he focuses on future new housing development, housing turnover, and family in-migration. Aside from the ability to predict that COVID would arrive in 2019 and have a significant impact on our lives, including enrollment, Dr. Casarda has been very accurate, and I'll highlight the report that you have this evening. The highlights include forecasting the population and household growth for the year up through the year 2040, assessment of annual enrollment growth and or decline as a whole and for each school since the year 2000, reasons for enrollment growth and or decline, computation and assessment of migration/retention and transfer of students by year and grade between 2000 and this school year, 3 series of enrollment projections by year and grade through 2031-32 for the whole district and middle schools, and through only 26-27 for the 7 individual elementary schools. The demographic history. This section will provide you with information on the history of Arlington Heights growth, assessing the annual enrollment changes since 1990, analyzing migration transfer patterns, and other sources of enrollment changes in light of the most recent data. Factors to consider: new housing, housing turnover, and family in-migration patterns. And finally, projecting the enrollment for elementary through 26-27 and middle schools through 31-32. You will have 3 series enrollment projections here on slide 5, the demographic history. They're based on different assumptions: the future fertility rates, new housing developments, housing turnover, and family migration to and from District 25. Again, we'll have 3 different forecasts by grade and year. Many of you have seen the previous enrollment projections, and we have 3 series, A, B, and C. A is the minimum number of students anticipated, B is the most likely, and C is more than the expected. On slide 6, the overview of District 25. We have approximately 10 square miles of land, primarily residential, mostly developed, currently serving 5,158 students this school year, and looks like a good return on investment if you purchased a home in Arlington Heights and still own the property today if you look at that table 1. Is anyone fidgeting with that graph, taking a look at it? All right. Slide number 7, the housing and population trends. The chart shows the population by age of Arlington Heights residents from 1950 to 2019 using the U.S. Census data. Significant growth after World War II. In 1950, the population was 8,768. In 1960, just 10 years later, 27,878. 10 years later, 66,884. And by 1990, Dr. Casarda would identify that most of the district was built out, as you see by total population, has leveled off since 1990. Slide number 8, The housing trends and student migration. In 1957, there were 3,000 students. By the year 1969-70, 10,000 students. That declined all the way through 1986, all the way back down to 3,700 students. The identified reasons are declining mortgage and interest rates, growing housing turnover to young families, and then a continued increase to the year 1990 with 3,949 students. In the year 2000, just over 4,500 students with 4,700. And this past time with COVID, we saw the largest drop since the year 2000 in our student enrollment. Between 2019, with 5,399 students, in 2020, last year, we enrolled 5,200 students. Slide 9, housing trends and student migration. This slide shows the three charts combined: the housing units sold since 2000, the median sales price since 2000, and the enrollment trends from 1957 through this school year. That's a really exciting chart off to the right. You'll see there's 4 columns, but 2 on the left, 2 on the right, all the way back from 1957, the enrollment in District 25. Slide number 10, as we are about to begin looking at the enrollment changes of the school district as a whole and by individual school, it is important to state that school districts are open demographic systems whose growth, stability, or decline is affected by 2 factors. Factor 1, the difference between the incoming size of the kindergarten class that enters and that same year, the size of the graduating class from that previous June. Factor 2, the net migration and transfer of school-age children in the district as they progress through the years. Slide number 11, grade by grade and year by year. Factor number 1, if you look at the chart, you'll notice the enrollment history of District 25 from 1990 through this school year. This helps you see the incoming size of the kindergarten class. As a reminder, it's a half-day program, and the size of the graduating 8th grade class. Slide 12, the annual total enrollment changes. This is factor 2, the net migration transfer of school-age children in the district as they progress through the grades each year. With the exception of COVID impact in the fall of 2020, for the past 28 years, we saw a positive net student in-migration and transfer. Since 2011, 1,292 more students migrated to District 25 or transferred than moved out. Between 2011 and 2017, student migration and transfer considerably exceeded the district enrollment losses from larger graduating 8th grade classes compared to our smaller number of entering kindergarten classes, resulting in a consistent annual growth in total enrollment since 2011 through 2018. Slide 13, net migration transfer grade by grade. Looking at a specific example of the impact of this migration and transfer, if you look at the chart on the table, on the left, table 5, the last row on the bottom, year 2020 to 2021, this year, from kindergarten to 1st grade, it's identified by K1. There were 82 new students enrolled. The kindergarten enrollment in 2020-2021 had 475 students. The 1st grade enrollment this school year was 557, thus 82 more students enrolled from kindergarten to 1st grade. Slide 14, individual school data. This slide is to understand how the data is going to be presented for each individual school in the upcoming slides. Each school will have 3 tables with the following information. Table 1, the enrollment history of that school. Table 2, the enrollment change, including the entering kindergarten class versus the exiting 5th grade class of that elementary building. The net annual migration and transfer. And Table 3, the net annual student migration transfer from one grade to the next. All right, here's our first example with Dryden. This shows the enrollment history and enrollment change from 1990 through this school year. And then the third slide, the third table, is on a separate slide, slide 16. This slide shows the net annual student migration and transfer from 1990 through this school year. So you will see that Dryden has been fairly stable and a consistent positive net student migration and transfer. All right, now you're going to see each building will have the same slides. So these are Greenbrier's enrollment history and enrollment change. And then Greenbrier's net annual student migration and transfer. You'll notice that Greenbrier is also fairly stable and a small net student out migration and transfer. If you think I'm going too fast on these ones, just wave me down. But I think you get the system. All right. Sounds good. Ivy Hill, slide 19. Enrollment history, enrollment change. Slide 20, net annual student migration and transfer. You'll notice that Ivy Hill, a considerable enrollment drop in the past 4 years, a major decline in kindergarten enrollment, a significant net student migration and transfer, net negative. Traditionally, Ivy Hill has been the elementary school with the highest mobility in District 25. And another special note that will be seen in a later slide, 51, is the impact on the racial ethnic composition in the student enrollment at Ivy Hill, as the Asian population declined from 2019 at 50% to 2021, a decline of 10% at 40%. I did want to note on this slide, it looks like 2011. The 11 should be 2019, just on that slide.
So just in 2 years, the decline of 10%.
Correct. But on slide 51, we will see that with the racial ethnic page for Ivy Hill. Olive Mary Stitt, enrollment history, enrollment change. Slide 22, Olive Mary Stitt, the net annual student migration and transfer. You'll notice Olive has a solid positive net student migration transfer, with the exception of the COVID years. Patton, enrollment history, enrollment change. In slide 24, you'll notice that Patton has a modest enrollment decline in the recent years, while the student migration and transfer has remained positive. Westgate, slide 25, enrollment history and change. Slide 26, you'll notice at Westgate a consistent yet slight increase and a 3-year trend of increase in the kindergarten enrollment. Windsor, slide 27, enrollment history and change. Slide 28. You'll notice at Windsor a significant decline in enrollment during the past 2 years, a drop attributed to smaller entering kindergarten classes compared to the graduating 5th grade classes, and a net negative student migration transfer. Did I go too far? Sorry about that. Way too far. All right, slide 29, South Middle School. Notice I put all 3 graphs on one page there. This shows all 3 slides, and you'll notice that South has been stable for the last 3 years. And Thomas, again, all 3 slides, all 3 tables on one slide. Thomas has risen slightly over the last 3 years in enrollment. All right. Slide 31, enrollment future of District 25. Dr. Casarda is able to project the enrollment of each school building, bringing together birth rates for Arlington Heights, trends in kindergarten enrollment, housing turnover, and the student migration and transfer. Some of the questions that he considers when making the projections: what will happen over the next 10 years? Will the overall enrollment declines that we've seen in these last 3 years cease? If so, when and at what level will the turnaround occur? Which grades will be impacted the most? And which schools will be impacted the most? Slide 32. Projecting Enrollment brings together data from the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. The Arlingtonites population between 2020 and 2030 is expected to grow by 4,765, and two sets of interrelated factors that Dr. Casarda is looking at. Factor one, the changing racial ethnic composition of district residents, and the fertility rates he is anticipating remaining near existing levels all the way through 2026. And he also believes, factor two, that the net district turnover, because of the housing developments, will have a minimal impact throughout the district. Just some last comments on this slide. Anticipated townhouse and apartment construction at the Windsor and Westgate attendance areas. We believe it's possible that Windsor may see 17 single-family units constructed in the year 2022, and the future student migration patterns will vary substantially, predicated on the degree of the housing turnover, driven by economic conditions and the mortgage interest rates. Slide 33, the enrollment future of District 25. The projections, as you will see, for the entire district and the middle schools go all the way through 31-32. The elementary schools only through 26-27. And it's important to note, I've said it once, this is assuming a continuation of the half-day program at kindergarten. Series A, as I've mentioned, you will see the less than anticipated enrollment. He anticipates that Series A is deflated by approximately 15%. Series B is like the perfect middle, what he expects the enrollment to be at the elementary levels and the middle schools. And he believes that the housing turnover will mirror the last 4 years in this area. And last, Series C. If you look at Series C, you'll see that it's greater than the anticipated, and it's about 15% increase over the Series B. We're getting there, people. I just want you to see what goes into it. It is so far away, I can't even see. What slide is that? 34? Perfect, all right. All right, another important caveat for individual elementary schools is that most District 25 had highly fluctuating annual kindergarten enrollments during the past 5 years, obviously impacted by COVID, which makes it challenging to predict the future kindergarten counts, and he just wants to make it clear that it's risky with the past 2 years and the fluctuating kindergarten enrollment. So because of that, he uses his professional judgment to smooth out the kindergarten enrollments and the assumptions that the COVID impact will lessen beginning next school year. The future kindergarten enrollments did not include the impact of going full day, again, assuming that half-day continues. Slide 35. One more important caveat. At the middle school, for the next 5 years, can be made with more confidence than for the 5 years following, starting with the year 2026-27, all the way through the next 5 years. And the reason is because most students who will enter the middle school through 26-27 are already enrolled here in our feeder schools at the elementary level. After 26-27, projecting those students that have not even registered in District 25, again, is risky. Projections after 26-27 at the individual elementary schools would include students that have not yet been conceived, making it really difficult to predict. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if there was a drum roll opportunity, this would be it. Here we go. Dryden, slide 36. On the left, you'll see in the upper left-hand corner the Series A. In the lower left-hand corner, you'll see Series C. Now draw your eyes to the right. That's Series B, what we expect the enrollment to be for the next 5 years at Dryden Elementary School. So all three series are on this page for Dryden, and you can see the first column is this school year, and then the next 5 is what Dr. Casarda is projecting for the future. And we will use Series B to do any forecasting for staffing and school size. So you're going to see the next elementary school, slide 37 is Greenbrier. Slide 38 is Ivy Hill. Slide 39 is Olive. Slide 40, Patton. Slide 41, Westgate. Slide 42, Windsor. Slide 43, South. And slide 44, Thomas. Now, I'm going to go back real quick because I know you guys are fidgeting, looking at all the schools, I'm sure. So just a quick comment on each one as I race through them. So Dryden, I anticipate an increase of 32 students over the next 5 years, minimal increase. Greenbrier, a steady enrollment for the next 5 years. Ivy Hill, significant decline in enrollment expected to continue from 522 students to 402 in just 5 years. One of the reasons is because we don't know if the lower incoming classes that we already have from the impact of COVID will get any larger as they go through. So because they're already smaller, those smaller class sizes need to go all the way through the system. Olive, expecting a steady enrollment with a slight decline. Patton, expect a very steady enrollment over the next 5 years. Westgate, significant increase of approximately 50 students over the next 5 years. Windsor, steady decline in overall enrollment over the next 5 years. And South, a decline in the next 3 to 4 years, and then an increase again over the following 5 after that to 833 students in the year 31-32. And Thomas, a significant overall decline. Some of you might understand why, because the elementary school Ivy feeds into Thomas, so you would expect numbers will go down at Thomas as well. So I expect a significant overall decline in enrollment over the next 6 years, going from this year at 955 students to 819 in the next 6 years. This chart is kind of exciting because you can see the whole school district. This is Series A for the entire school district. Again, this is if it's less than expected. On slide 46, this is the whole district, all in one page. Series B, this is what we would expect to see. And you do expect to see a decline in overall enrollment over the next 5 years from 5,158 students to 4,925, or a decline of 233 students. And this is the Series C projection. I'm getting there. No. I always wonder, is Adam moving it? Thank you. All right, slide 48 is the whole district racial ethnic composition. You'll notice the composition of racial ethnic groups, the American Indian, Asian, Black, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, white, and 2 or more races. The source of this data is from the Illinois Interactive Report Card. As a whole district, over the past 20 years, we have an increase in 10% in our Asian student population, an increase by 1% of our Black population, an increase of 4.9% in our Hispanic population, an increase of less than 0.5% of our Pacific Islander student population, an increase of 1% of our student population of 2 or more races, and a decrease of our white student population by 16.5%. So as a whole district over the past 5 years, we have followed a very similar pattern of increases and decreases, just at smaller percentages, with the two other categories of students decreasing in student population being our American Indian and those who identify with 2 or more races. So this slide then will lead into all of the individual buildings. The first one being Dryden. You can see for the last 20 years, since the year 2000, their racial and ethnic composition. And in this graph, or table, you can see the year 2000 is at the bottom, and then the current year is at the very top. And so you can see as the rows go up, some of the student ethnic compositions change, some dramatically, some increase slightly as well. The next one, similar table for Greenbrier. For Ivy Hill, I had mentioned this one earlier in my presentation. You'll notice if you look all the way from 2000, significant changes, but just in the past couple years, the impact of COVID has had a 10% impact on our Asian student population. Olive, slide 52. Patton, slide 53. Westgate, slide 54. Windsor, slide 55. South, slide 56. Thomas, 57. And the next one is looking at our early childhood numbers at Greenbrier, and I included the Greenbrier enrollment as well. So this slide shows EC enrollment since 2011 being pretty steady, and the Greenbrier K-5 enrollment also from 2011 showing a steady growth. The reason this slide is included is because we currently house all of our EC students at Greenbrier. All right, so looking at this table on slide 59, it shows the births to residents in the zip codes served by District 25 from the year 2000 all the way through 2020. And this data was pulled from a group we haven't heard much from recently, the Illinois Department of Public Health. As a reminder, the factors underlying these projections are kindergarten enrollment lags annual community births by approximately 5 years. Many District 25 students are born elsewhere, making it hard to project enrollments based solely off of the births in the local area. And there's been a modest downward trend in registered births to residents of the 2 zip codes between 2016 and 2020. We anticipate a solid housing turnover expected to continue. And by Dr. Casarda, kindergarten enrollment will edge up slightly, even in the future, if District 25 remains with a half-day kindergarten program. Growing numbers of residents over the age of 65 in Arlington Heights will lead to increased housing turnover, the empty nesters to young families with preschool-age children. So we anticipate the net migration of District 25 remaining positive. Slide 60, the overall impressions. We will have 2 elementary schools that are considered to be stable with their student enrollment. Those are Greenbrier and Patton. We have 2 elementary schools that are considered to have modest increases. Those are Dryden and Westgate. We have 2 elementary schools that are considered to have slight decreases, Olive, Mary Stitt, and Windsor. And we will have 1 elementary school expected to have significant decline in student enrollment, that is Ivy Hill, from this year at 552, anticipating going down to 402 in just 5 years. We will have declining enrollment at both middle schools, with South this year at 848, declining to 782 in only 3 years, totaling a decrease of 66 students. South's enrollment is expected to increase again over the following 7 years, rising to 833, which is approximately where we're at today. Thomas will see a steady decline in enrollment over the next 6 years, with an expected enrollment of 819 students in the year 27-28, after which Thomas will see modest growth up to 849 students in the year 2030-31. Slide 61, what does the future hold? Overall projection analysis conclusion, a modest 233 student decrease over the next 5 years, after which slight increments will occur. Half of that total is coming out of one school, Ivy Hill. 2 separate projections are currently being requested from Dr. Casarda. The second study that we are asking for is to help us with our anticipated full-day kindergarten moving forward. What would the future numbers look like if we were expecting to have a full-day program in District 25? And the third study that we will ask him to conduct is a study that is just like this, using the expected full-day kindergarten projections. So we have 2 more studies that we are hoping that will come to us, and basically study 2 is, if we went full-day kindergarten, how does he figure out how many expected kindergarten kids we would have come to a full-day program? And then, using that number, how would you anticipate our enrollment changing? So a study just like this one. We are currently anticipating that the future kindergarten enrollment will most likely mirror our first grade enrollment should we move to a full-day kindergarten, but without the study, we won't know that for sure. And we'll continue to use our Series B, the expected enrollment, when projecting and preparing for staffing and students. And the final slide. I just wanted to thank you, board, for allowing us to use Dr. Casarda again to help us forecast the enrollment. And Dr. Casarda always likes me to throw in there that he does not have a crystal ball and that he's using the best information he can and his experience to give us the best information to help us with our future projections. So thank you for allowing me to present tonight, 62 slides. Any comments or questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Kay. And please convey to Dr. Casarda that in our eyes, he is the king of the demographics. It was really interesting, many, many pages, but such interesting data about our community and changes in our community. A couple of things I'll start off with and then let my colleagues jump in, is that I think Dr. Casarda's, what jumped out at me and resonated is that the data he shows makes a case for kindergarten, because it seemed like there's 82 new students that go from, that move into our first grade from our kindergarten.
Correct.
So definitely making a case for kindergarten. And also from a learning perspective, we know that continuity of care when a student remains in a school building is most effective, because the least disruptions a student has from transitioning from grade to grade or building to building actually is better. So that totally, for me, these demographics show the case for kindergarten again. And I also thought it was really interesting, the changing racial and ethnic composition of the district, right? And what we're doing here in District 25 is really in our equity-focused strategic plan, where it has always been important, but this data even confirms it more, because we're focusing forward on our quest for excellence by empowering an inclusive, diverse community of learners to innovate and thrive as global citizens, right? And this shows us that we've always been on point, and our strategic plan is going to allow us to meet the needs of all students and truly be at the cutting edge of what's needed in our community. So I'm thankful for those insights that were shared.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
No, I just want to say this was great data, and I'm looking forward to the kindergarten conversation, because I think this really sort of solidifies some of the previous conversations we had, and this will help drive a lot of that. I know Rich will have some additional questions, so I'll give you the
Well, thank you. But one thing to note, I think this is the 4th study he's done for us, maybe, and every study gets thicker and thicker and thicker. So I'm not sure if we pay him by the pound or something of that nature. But he keeps, I think like all things, when you study something over now probably 10 years, you gain a lot of insight as to just what's happening in that particular community and things of that nature. So I think that's good. And just as Chad said, I think I wanted to highlight something because I think, you know, the information here is a lot different, or maybe is different, maybe further than I would have projected or even thought of, right? I mean, we all kind of thought, hey, you know, it's going on, but this really speaks to it in a different way. And I wanted to highlight a couple numbers, especially with the areas that we saw earlier. So earlier this week, several of us were at Westgate and Thomas, and so I want to talk about some of these numbers, and maybe you'll pick up why. So again, using the study here, what I did, even though we've talked about what happened since this school year, in the projection forward, I wanted to highlight just numbers based on the high points, which was really 2018. So Dryden was at 500 and is projected to be at 510. So, you know, basically the same. Greenbrier is 300, right in that area, so no change. Ivy Hill, at the high point, was 682 kids. Now it's projected to be, in a few years, 402. So we're dropping 280 students, that's 14 classrooms in that particular school. So again, to Chad's point about what does this mean for, you know, kindergarten or even overall, you know, some maybe ideas that we said, we shouldn't even look at, we might need to look at or just think about again or just question it. OMS, 660 at the high point, projecting to be 600. Patton, 445, 400. Windsor, 531 down to 432. Okay, so all those schools either stayed flat or went down. Westgate, in 2018, at that high point, when everyone else was at high, was at 594. They're projected to be at 646. So some of us visited Westgate earlier, and I thought, you know, again, teachers are doing great, but it's tight. It's tight there now. And if the projections are, you know, 2018 is not too far ago, and if they're supposed to grow another 100 kids, we need to make a decision about Westgate somehow to do something with that geographic area there as we look at it. So I think that really fits into that overall discussion of not only kindergarten, because now we have this, you know, anomaly of Ivy Hill and what we do for the overall areas, but really now at the other end of the district, you know, which is really the other end of the district, we have another anomaly that's occurring there. I also think, so that's one area, just no question, just comment, something all for us to think about. The other one I think, which was interesting, and again, I'd look to Lori and the staff, is I know when we did our full day kindergarten, we were projecting 625 as the incoming numbers based on the first grade class. Now looking at this, it's 522, and so it's good that we're getting that other study just to validate, yep, 522 is closer to reality, which would then again go into a decision around how should we handle full day kindergarten if the numbers are, you know, basically 100 less potentially. So a lot of interesting things coming up. Now my question with that is, knowing that we're supposed to come back to a full day committee in 2 weeks, do we have enough time, or does the staff have enough time to digest this, now look at the impact of that, and come back so that we can, you know, keep on time, keep on our projected timeline and be making a decision sometime in March as to what to do?
Yeah, so at this point, we're still ready to move forward with that timeline. Thank you. I will just note a couple of things. So historically, like Dr. K mentioned, we've always looked at Series B, and really they've been really pretty close on, like across the district within single number of kids differences. There's been a few years, however, where Ivy Hill, we've had to move to Series C, the higher than expected, because we saw that occurring at Ivy Hill. And the unknown about Ivy Hill moving forward really is families that left the country during COVID and were unable or chose not to return. Will they return now? And will they return at the grade levels they would have been, or will we see the current low numbers of grade levels, like Brian said, move through? We often see around April or May an increase in enrollment at Ivy because the schools in India end in March. We are starting to get some of those registrations calling us now. And then the other thing that's always happened with Ivy historically is in August, we've always ended up adding 1 or 2 sections due to a large enrollment occurring in August. Again, we just don't know. So Dr. Casarda did exactly what we would want him to do and base it on the data we have here right now. And then the unknowns we're just gonna have to watch and see what happened.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. K.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one quick question.
No,
sir.
sorry, we already dismissed them.
Moved along. No.
We'll be here till midnight.
Pretty please, Mr. Vice President.
That's so nice.
No, but Dr. White, another thing that you had mentioned last time that we should continue to research and keep our minds open to as a board is this research trend towards the need for early childhood education and how that's going to move along in the nation as the need rise, right, of providing early childhood. So those classrooms, I wonder, will Dr. Casarda kind of look at that as well, or is that too far to even think about that?
We can ask him if he has a formula for projecting. Our early childhood, as the board knows, is mostly for students who qualify with special needs for early childhood, and then tuition-based preschool students combined with them. We can ask him if he has projections related to early childhood for the future.
To Dr. Bynum, remember you had mentioned like research-wise in the country that there is going to be a trend for early childhood that might look a little bit different in Arlington Heights than before.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, now, you are excused. On to item number 13, Superintendent Report. Dr. Lori Bynum.
Thank you. The first item, again, is the list that we provide for the board. Thank you, Brian. On the Freedom of Information Act's requests and responses that have been done since the last board meeting. Throughout our districts, throughout the state, there is definitely a significant increase in Freedom of Information Act requests. And I want to kind of give kudos to our staff, especially Stacy Malik, who is our Freedom of Information Act officer, who does the work to respond to these. I have great respect for the ability for our community to do Freedom of Information Act requests, but I do want to just make sure the board is aware. You have at your seat just kind of a chart that we've always kept that lists the requests, when they're made, the dates that we respond, the amount of attorney fees, costs that go into those, and the hours that staff, especially Stacy and her assistant, work on these. One of the things I just want to highlight to you is Stacy really does a lot of the pre-work. So when we get, for example, if we get a request for any emails related to technology, professional development, we might get a vendor that sends something into our system and it goes to 850 staff members. There's 850 records that Stacy goes through and weeds out, knowing that there are 850 of the same record, before she employs the attorneys to go through anything that we would need their services with. In many school districts, because it is labor intensive on Stacy's time, in many school districts they skip that step and all of a sudden and just turn all records automatically over to the attorney and have them go through anything. So in a recent request for us, for example, there were initially 4,000 records. Stacy took about 20 hours to go through and get that down to 400 realistic records that we then needed the attorney's assistance with. As Stacy's time gets very busy, I am close, just so the board knows, to directing her to not use her time on these and instead to send, for example, all 4,000 records to the attorney. But Stacy, wants to do as much of that work as she can because of the cost, the financial cost to that. But again, there's also a cost to her time, and so I'm just making the board aware of that. With the Freedom of Information Act, there is a point where requests can be considered unduly burdensome. And that can really happen in two ways. If there's an individual that is requesting a large number of ongoing FOIA information requests, or if an individual lists a large number of topics within one request. So it is rare that those occur. We have experienced a couple of those this year, and Stacy responds and asks the person to kind of narrow their search and then follows through. So again, that's what the FOIA Act is for the public to be able to access documents that they wish to view. And we will continue to respond as quickly as possible. And we'll just keep updating the board on kind of those associated costs, especially when I transition Stacy to giving more of that work to the attorneys when she needs to focus some of her efforts on other things.
So it's interesting, I just totaled those up since we were talking about it, right? And this is what, a month's worth of FOIAs?
No, this is more like 2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, we spent $3,500 as a district, paying lawyers to look this over, and Stacy and her staff spent 43 hours of our time that they could be dedicating to students, services, and other things on information. So just, you know, I'm not making any connotation there, I'm just totaling up numbers and just something to think about.
Okay.
All right. On to, do we have a pandemic procedure update?
We do.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna try with my glasses on. Let's see what happens. So much of this is kind of information that the board and community may already be aware of, but there's a couple of changes that I'll highlight for you. Pandemic, I'm hoping, came in like a lion, but is hopefully going out like a lamb. We're definitely at a much calmer place than we have been over the past 2.5 years. Switch to this. This is actually a chart from last Monday. That this chart gets updated pretty much every 5 minutes. And what it says on this version is that in the second column from the left, that we at the time had 18 positive cases. On Mondays, we actually see this number change a lot because from the weekend, our staff is updating those that are no longer positive, and we tend to get our most notifications of new positives on Monday. So this was this Monday, but actually later in the day, it dropped to 10, and right now, it's actually 8. We currently have 8 positive cases of students in the district. At this moment, 2 positive staff members in the district. The other thing that changed dramatically since the temporary restraining order is the exclusion number of cases. Often that was 2 to 4 times as large. At this moment in District 25, just like we have 8 positive student cases, we have 13 excluded cases, and that includes those 8. So those numbers are really from staff currently at the moment, 2 positive, 2 excluded. So those would be the same people. So while this is real time, and I really appreciate Adam Harris putting this together, working with Stacy Malik on the formulas of this, while it is real time, I just want to be transparent that it also can have some operator error. We've got to update some information each time that can impact it, and Mondays is really the day that we're most kind of updating stuff from the weekend. So it might look one way at 9 o'clock, and it's going to look different at 3 o'clock on Mondays. And then our weekly information, we're continuing to provide that. So this is the week of February 13th to the 19th. Across that whole week, we saw 17 positive student cases and 2 positive staff cases. Again, I always like to refer to the trend line at the bottom. I think that is really substantial information. You can see that positive group of students when we had a spike, just like the country did in early January, aligned with when Omicron really became active. So we saw a significant number of cases at that time. But then you see the dramatic decline as well, taking us to last week. This is the SHIELD test. We continue to offer optional SHIELD testing for those who wish to participate. And the top line is the number of SHIELD tests. The reason that kind of goes up and down is really with vacations, or if we're off a couple days for parent conferences, we didn't have SHIELD testing, so you'll see the number drop. It's really the bottom line that shows you the positives that we learned about through SHIELD testing. And so again, you'll see that spike up into the mid-40s of positive cases we identified through SHIELD in early January, back down to the single digits is where we are at now. Currently, I don't know if I put this in here, currently we have 0.02% positivity in District 25. So not even 0.5%, still less than 0.25% current positive. Again, 8 students out of 5,200 students in the district currently. So as I shared with our community, we are continuing some mitigation strategies, discontinuing others. We are continuing mask recommended, not required. Masks do continue to be required on transportation. That includes school buses, it includes school taxis. It includes our school medical transportation vans as well. We'll continue to have hand washing. We have excellent ventilation maintenance and disinfection procedures. We will continue to exclude COVID positive cases. Not close contacts, but those who notify us that they're actually positive are still excluded. We'll continue to offer the Academy program for those who wish to take advantage of it. We'll continue to do our best with 3-foot distancing to the greatest extent possible. And again, we have our voluntary SHIELD testing available for families. We have just discontinued contact tracing. We tried to continue doing contact tracing after the TRO to help, because some families asked and said, I still want to know if my child is a close contact. It's really very difficult to do and really unreliable, because sometimes kids are wearing masks and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're wearing them at 8 a.m. and they're not at 9 a.m. Or maybe I'm positive and I'm wearing my mask, so we'd only do 3 feet, but some of the kids that are sitting 6 feet from me are not wearing their masks. So it really was, we did not feel that we could give families really true information that was really reliable. So we have, and it, in order to do that, it is labor intensive, which we have been willing to do, appreciating the board's agreement to have contact tracers. They've been substantially helpful. But as we got into the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks, we just realized we could not do it reliably. And we're not able to give parents real good information to go on. We have discontinued exclusion of close contacts. Again, you saw in that chart exclusion cases now almost mirror positive cases. And we have discontinued a requirement of tests to return. So prior, if somebody had some symptoms, we would require them to test for COVID to return. We're now kind of treating COVID symptoms as we would all other illness symptoms. We don't require people to take a strep test. We don't require that. So if someone has symptoms and has definitely been exposed to a positive case, that we can consider probable and can require them to stay home. But if someone has symptoms but has not been exposed, then they just follow our typical symptom procedures. 24 hours fever-free, 24 hours nausea-free, etc. So some next steps. Again, we will continue to monitor our data, which again is incredibly fantastic right now. Now, of course, we know that we don't know all the positive cases, right? We're reporting the cases that we know are positive. But again, it's it's the lowest it's really been since the pandemic began in District 25. we'll continue to monitor that, as well as our area COVID data. If we see a difference in the trend, we will adjust. We are doing some procedure updates, and principals will be communicating to their communities exactly what those look like in their buildings. I have asked principals to try by March 7th to have some procedural changes in place related to how lunch is done, how we can bring assemblies back, reinstituting field trips. We will be allowing students to come be spectators at middle school events, for example, participation in extracurricular activities. And we'll continue to provide updates to the community as things are presented to us that might need changes. So that's kind of it. Again, nothing significantly new for the board, but I just kind of wanted to highlight some of those things for you.
Mr. Vice President?
Yes, Greg?
I just had a couple of questions for you,
Sure.
Dr. Vine. Before I get into them, I just wanted to say, we are fortunate to belong to a caring and compassionate community, and that I'm talking about our school community, I'm talking about our wider community. And we see it every day, and so, right now we are in the process of making big changes, starting with the TRO, and the mitigations that have kept our kids in school this year. And so I think what we want to hear at this moment is that our district is being thoughtful and thorough as we go through this process, right? And to learn more about how our district is being caring and compassionate. So I'm just framing my questions in those terms. So first, when we're thinking about students who may be medically fragile, immunocompromised, or considered high risk, what steps is the district taking to make sure they have safe access to learning?
Yeah, good question. Each of those students we have been with throughout the process, working with individually with their families, and have been doing that since the TRO and as things change. So there are a variety of things that are occurring for our students who are medically fragile, but they're really individualized for that student's need. So it's not like we would say, if you're medically fragile, you get X accommodation, or we'll do Y accommodation. We've really worked with the families on what does that individual child need. Again, that kind of runs the gamut on what it could be.
Mm-hmm. And so, it was nice this evening to hear some good anecdotal evidence of what I'm going to ask about next. But, as we go through change, we want our learning environments to be supportive in that change. We want to discourage teasing or bullying related to, we don't want that related to a family's choice or student's choice regarding masking with or without. So, what steps are being taken? How are those lessons, we have to reteach lessons, right? We don't just say it once. So how is that being taken care of in our schools?
Yeah, well, that's really what Ruler does, right? Pandemic or no pandemic. But definitely we put some emphasis in our classrooms and in our buildings as we were making the changes of let's be respectful, let's be good friends, let's care. Is there some teasing going on? I hear from our families that there is. It's not what we're seeing in our classrooms or in our schools, but we will continue to address that. I'd also like to thank, we have a local mental health organization that provided us with some tips to share with families to continue to have conversations with their children about what do you do if your friends are wearing a mask or your friends aren't wearing a mask. And so we're sending that home to help our families continue to have those conversations, and we will continue to teach those in our classrooms as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And could you just give us a little more commentary on the decision to return lunch to pre-pandemic procedures? Understandably, that could be a stress point, right? This is where everybody takes off their masks, right?
Right.
So if you could just a little more, I know it's going to be school specific, just acknowledge that.
So in our schools in the past month or so, they've been handling it some different ways, and because it's pretty difficult for us to have 6 feet when masks are off unless we have half the student population. So in some schools, we've been using a variety of extra spaces to have lunch. But in most schools, to be honest with you, they've been sitting 3 feet apart, and we've shortened the time of lunch. So because to be a close contact, you have to be without your mask off for 15 minutes or more. So we've shortened the eating time and had their kids put their mask back on so that that length of time doesn't cause someone to be a close contact. During that time, we're also in some of our classrooms having snacks where again they're taking off their mask, eating snack, often 3 feet from each other, not the full 6 feet. And so trying to social distance the best we can when we're not wearing masks. And during that time, we have not seen exposure to our students from the times that we've had our masks off in District 25. And so we're moving forward with distancing to the greatest extent possible, but really being open about, we believe it's time to bring our kids back into the lunchroom to be with their friends, to expand their time to have lunch and to socialize with their friends, knowing that while we've been doing distancing to the greatest extent possible, it has not been flawless, and we couldn't guarantee that students were fully 6 feet or even fully 3 feet. We were doing the best we could, but even with that, we did not see exposure within our schools. So with our data that has dropped so significantly low, we believe that's one of the steps to now move forward for our kids. We'll continue to monitor that, and of course, if we see something happens and our data is going up, we have the capacity to go back into additional spaces, shorten the lunch time, do some of those strategies should we need to.
And another place that might be a concern for families is assemblies, right? We're going to put a lot of people in a space. I guess it's similar to lunch, right? But in that case, you might have a concern about it's even bigger than lunch. Maybe if it's a whole school assembly, like indoor air quality, right? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and as we look at scheduling assemblies, our schools are also looking at, can I schedule assembly and do it twice a day? So I may be bringing half of my kids instead of all of my kids, right? So they're going to look at what options exist to still continue distancing to the greatest extent possible. But if they feel that our data is still good and we want to have this an all-school assembly is really impactful for our kids right now, they will schedule that. Now with that, related to what you asked, we know that our air quality is excellent. We know that our HVAC maintenance is excellent. Not only do we have a great facility staff, but we had a third-party industrial engineering firm come in and monitor that for us and give us the highest rating in that area. So we're really confident that the ventilation aspect of things is really extraordinarily fantastic here in our schools.
Another one I had for you is, can you talk for a minute, and you shared details about lunch and assemblies, those changes. Can you talk about, for someone that might not be intimately familiar, as probably you are, with IDPH guidance or CCD, Cook County's guidance, how it aligns or varies with that guidance?
Yeah, sure. So right now, the Cook County Health Department, we meet with them weekly. They provide an opportunity for all schools to have a conversation, and then we can also have individual conversations. They do recommend masking throughout schools right now in Cook County. So we have talked in detail with them about, okay, we know that's still the recommendation. Now, we also have a legal aspect, right, that we need to be aware of. But we've also said, can you help us understand, is it a requirement? Is it a recommendation? Here's our numbers within our district. Here's our numbers in Arlington Heights. Here's what our plan is based on all of those things combined. And again, they understand. They don't say, Dr. Bine, you should not do that, it's dangerous. But they say, again, as a county health department, we do recommend masking in all schools at this time. So we're not directly aligned with what Cook County Health Department would hope that all would do. But again, talking with them, taking that as an important piece of the information and looking at our internal data, we do feel we're making the right decision at this time.
And would you say we're aligning or varying from social distancing recommendations specifically?
Yeah, they would continue to say 6 foot when masks are off,
okay.
And 3 feet with masks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Will the notifications, I'll say for example, elementary classrooms, will those still go out if there's a positive COVID case?
Yeah, thank you. At this point, yes, we do plan to still send a letter to a full school community when we have a positive case that does say what classroom that case was connected to. Mm-hmm. So those are still going out.
You know, and when we're talking about, you know, managing or helping people move through change, or students, right? We know that communication is so important, and I'd like to highlight an example that when we knew the court case, like there was going to be a decision coming, and you sent out an email to kind of prep the community for this, what might be coming. So I think you mentioned principals are going to be sending out information about these changes. So what kind of lead time, you know, would a parent expect? You know, I'm going to get an email, but are the changes going to be the next day, right? Or I know you said by March 7th, mm-hmm. but I'm talking about when is it communicated, and then when would we?
And they're trying to give as much lead time as they can, which is why on Saturday I first put out in my letter, please know these things are coming, your school principals will reach out to you. I know there was a notification in one building today that went out that said starting on March 2nd, we're going to take this step. Then by March 5th, we're going to take this next step. So they're trying to give as much time as they can. Mm-hmm. Depending on how significant the change is, it might be a shorter time span. But I would expect that if that any of those school newsletters that are going out this week should be having some of those, some of that information for parents in them.
And if I'm a parent with concerns still,
mm-hmm.
right after I see that communication, do I reach out to my principal? Is that the best
exactly,
first step?
yes. Reach out to that would be your first go-to. Reach out to your school principal, express your concerns, see what can be worked out, mm-hmm. And we can go from there.
Thank you. I appreciate
it.
Go
ahead. I know we talk about extracurricular activities, so just making sure I'm understanding. Does this mean like if the PTA says I want to do a sock op, I'm just going through like, because I'm thinking about I know I'm asking different versions, but just I know we're going to have the opposite of this too, right? We're going to have parents asking like, can we have an 8th grade dance? Can we have this? All the things that these kids have missed out on. I think it's an important thing that we also understand that we want to, if, you know, we stay steady at the present moment, we can anticipate these coming back, because I think that's the experiences that a lot of parents are also looking for, right? I understand the safety and concerns from one side, but I also know the other side is looking for sock hops and Friday night movie nights and all the other things that we've done, right? Musical, all the things. I just want to make sure that the goal here is really, it's going to be, as Greg said, a steady state of, okay, comfort level throughout the process, but I just want to make sure that we're not just saying, okay, one way, but it's like, this is the intention.
Yeah, thank you. Our principals are also going to be working with their PTAs and their staff to start putting out dates of here are things that are coming, so that people know, well, we're going to be doing this event and it's on April 5th or it's on April 8th. Anything that we have hosted in the past can be hosted now. Now, having said that, a PTA may decide, you know what, we like the event this way rather than the other way. But there's nothing in terms of COVID that's going to prevent us from having all of the events and activities that we had pre-pandemic with how our data is right now. There are some things I will say that the schools have already decided. We want to do this 8th grade picnic activity day instead of a dance or what have you. But yes, our intent is that, again, with where things are right now, that we can have all of the in-person activities that we would in a typical school year.
I'm going to tack on to my colleagues here. Dr. Bynum, thanks for kind of talking about the measures to be taken for students and families who are immunocompromised, right? Because as a board, we're here for every single student, and our vision statement And actually, I'm a huge fan of our strategic plan, so I keep quoting it today. But, you know, as a board, we're here for every learner every day, right? That's our vision. And so as we do this and as we transition, and as a board, we get emails from different sections of the parent population with different concerns or different celebrations or different things that they're excited about. So really making sure that we're meeting the needs of every student, especially in this case, adding on to what Greg was saying about students who are medically fragile, keep in mind this compassion and empathy piece and perspective taking. So, and like you said, there are some things that may remain that we've learned that we like from COVID. Like, for instance, the Arlington Heights Council PTA, they meet through Zoom, and they may continue to, you know, Dr. Bynum and I, meet with them, and seems like they get more participation through Zoom. So it'll be interesting to see what stays, what goes, and different things that we kind of change as we go along here. So thanks for all the attention.
All right.
Vice President, just two quick questions. Lori, I know Greg was bringing up the Cook County recommendations. Do you know how many school districts in Cook County are going to mask optional, or maybe even the state?
I can tell you that I couldn't tell you the update in the last couple of days, but there's about 850 school districts in the state, and as of early this week, 700 of those districts had gone mask optional.
The other, maybe just more of a comment, and this is really more of a comment to the administration and to the teachers. You know, obviously, a transition like this is quick. It came quickly, but you know, from again visiting Thomas and Westgate, it was just like, and I don't want to say a normal school, you know, normal day if there's a normal, but there was a level of consistency, a level of I don't want routineness maybe. And again, I don't want to say that's bad or good, but it was. You know, it wasn't like it was radical and, you know, cats and dogs living together and things of that nature. It was, we're here to learn. Let's get the kids moving in that direction. Regardless of the choice someone was making, it was as if it was a non-event and the kids were there to learn and partake. We saw the STEM classes, we saw art classes, we saw, you know, gym, we saw everything going around. It was just nice to see that it wasn't an event. It was just normal. So hats off to the staff and to the teachers for not making an event. It was, as we've talked about, it's a choice. We respect everyone's choice, and let's get on with the education. So hats off. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President.
Yes, Gina.
Dr. Bynum, can you offer some commentary or insights as we move back to some of these pre-pandemic activities? Are those going to be consistent across the district, or are they going to be up to the local school PTA and the school principal?
So the activities have always differed per building, right, to somewhat. But what will be consistent is that every building can choose the activities and events that they want to have, PTAs can, and that COVID will not be a reason to not have those events.
All right. Well, thank you for all the commentary. Let's move on to item number C, the strategic plan update.
Long day, the board's still doing okay?
I was going to say, we should be making either a break or should we be making a call for a meeting, as we've talked about before, to say, because we got a lot, we still got. So do we call it now and add it to later, or try to get through some things?
I think we could, the items that are here, we could hold, or we could call it set a time if the board wants.
I think there's only one action left, which is the reading of the.
Oh, yeah, the policy reading.
Everything else is all updates. And even the action could technically wait.
I don't think we set a deadline.
Yeah, I don't remember if we set a time. I just vowed that we're never going to go to another calendar day again.
So does the board want to move to the action items?
Here's my question. So I know we're meeting next week in a committee of the whole. Can you not, and it's just so I understand, committee of the whole, you can't move these to the committee of the whole to do them as an action item, right?
Well, we can just change it and call it a special meeting where we add these to it.
Because I'm just thinking, we're meeting, I think it's next week, right? Or the week after.
So we could do a
In all fairness, in principle, your idea, I'm good with it, except if I remember, that agenda is loaded for the committee whole, right? Like, there's a lot on it. That's all.
Either we can do it next time, or we wait and do it in the following month. I'm just using it as an example of what we can do, because I'm fine if we say, you know.
I would tell you all these items could wait till the regular March meeting, which is March 17th, except again, the action items would be good to get those policies in place if you're ready to, but those could also wait till March 17th.
We could do toward that end with the action, or I'll suggest that you can tell if we can do it. If there's any policies we have questions on, we could table those and then approve any that we don't have questions on. Maybe.
All right, so before we introduce them, we need to ask if there's questions. Is that how we're going to do it? Or do we know that based upon?
Like someone could just say, could we hold on policy
Yeah, all
this,
right.
this, and this?
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Hold
that's all you have
policy
to say. You don't even have to say why.
We did the same thing last time.
And we would need that before the motion, Brian.
Yep, correct. Okay, so we're postponing, I'll say, item C, strategic plan update, item D,
Public Act.
Public Act 102-0543, item E, board meeting structure. So now we are at the first of the action items.
And
Item F.
H, are we going to postpone the first reading?
Can I skip one?
Well, I think he's going in order.
Yeah, we're just going in order.
Stopping at F.
Yep. So, stopping at F because that's the first action item. Second,
Yep.
reading the policies.
I guess I have a question just to confirm.
Oh, sure.
I know we asked a lot of questions. We're good with them. I think we don't hold them personally.
Right, don't hold them just because there were questions. If those questions
that's
were
all I'm
answered
asking.
here and you're good with that resolve, let it go. All right, good clarification. So, is there any reason to hold item F, second reading of policies, press 108?
Yeah, I'd like to hold 3-40 and 4-175.
Can you repeat those, please?
3:40 and 4:175.
Okay.
So,
Hold those.
so then we're holding the whole policy because of those two, right?
Well, no, we're just holding those two policies.
Well, then she,
Pulling them out of this approval.
yeah, no.
Okay,
then I'll
pulling
just
them
do-
out of this approval.
Shows you have to list all of them.
Okay.
Just-
Are
So,
there any others people wish to pull out of the approval list?
Do you have any others? I haven't either.
Okay. You can make a motion. Yep.
Mr. Vice President?
yes.
I move that the Board of Education approve the policies and exhibits as presented by the Illinois Association of School Boards, with the exception of policies 3:40, and policy 4:175.
Thank you, Greg. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chad. We'll start the voting down by Chad, just for a little
Yes.
variety.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Policies pass 6-0. Now, for clarification, does that
Letter
take
G.
us, now we got to do the same for letter G. Are there any pullouts for letter G? 5-year review? No? Then somebody want to give us a motion on that one?
Mr. Vice President?
Yes, Greg?
I move that the Board of Education approve the policies as presented by the Illinois Association of School Boards for a 5-year review.
All right, thank you, Greg. Do I have a second? Thank you, Rich. Let's start the voting down by.
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, item G passes 6-0. On to item H, the first reading of policies. Skip that one?
Yep. And then move to.
Why are we skipping that one?
Can I ask a procedural question?
Yeah.
Do we need to skip H, like, for first reading? Like,
Yeah, that's what I was
could-
wondering.
Yeah,
I just don't remember
Oh, you were
if
skipping it
there's
because
a
it
lot
wasn't
to say.
action. Gotcha.
It can still come back as a second reading at the next
Yeah,
meeting,
so
and
we're
so that
good.
it's in front of you to review.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I'll,
We still have 10 minutes. Why don't we knock out like E or?
Well, we also have to do public comment. But it's up to
Yeah,
you
but
guys. It's up to you guys. Do you want to go back to E? Just keep going.
yeah,
That's fine.
yeah.
It just seemed like it was an easy one. Have no Starbucks.
She's Starbucks-less.
Right.
All right, where are we here?
14A.
We're on 14A, which is future agenda items.
No, public.
Nope.
Oh, it may address to the board.
Any community input.
Oh, sorry. A, you did say A. See, I can't even make it till 10. I'm old.
My glasses too?
Yeah, need another pair. Public, so do we have any second round public comments? Any blue cards? No? All right, so that's a good one, or done one, I should say. Now we're on to future agenda items. Are there any topics with dates to be determined? No. Are there any new,
Yeah, Mr. Vice President, definitely not for discussion for today, but for a future topic, I'd like to bring up again upon further reflection for our board to revisit the topic of having a policy committee. And I'll go over the reasoning and rationale next time for that.
okay. Not saying, okay, we'll have the committee, of course, I'm saying. It's nuts.
Thank you.
All right.
And then,
Any new topics?
Now, a question on the future topics.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know we talked about having an academy update at some point. I thought it was going to be here, but obviously the agenda was obviously long, but do we know when that's coming?
And my update was really to share that it will continue to be available for
Okay.
those who need to use it who are excluded.
I thought we had different topics, but we can talk that offline on
Okay.
it, or different subjects on it, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
I lied, I have one more additional topic to be determined. Dr. Bynum, if you could also, I know we talked about, bringing back that equity audit as a report, if we could kind of hear a touch point of where we're with that. Thank you.
All right, and we were done with our closed session, right? So we don't have to go back, so I need a motion to close, motion to adjourn.
On future topic, does it make sense to actually set a time limit for ourselves then? Because we're going to do this, to make this and make it so that we say the meeting is from this till this time. And put it in, right, put it in the,
Well,
the
yeah, it would be
structure.
in that board meeting structure.
Yeah.
I eat it, she wanted a
Okay.
fast pass. too.
Right, I'm just saying. So that we can bring it back, because I think it makes sense, right, that we target this time, we understand there could be extra time, but the reality is I think we just need to make it really a policy as opposed to just us randomly saying,
have us still looking
it's
at
10 o'clock,
graphs and
let's
stuff.
rock.
You let us off easy on the concerted
Yeah.
conversation.
Do that.
And maybe
Well, I know
that,
we're coming back to it.
and to Chad's point, maybe that'll help us in developing the agenda and kind of estimating the time. So for the sake of transparency for our community, they don't come for something and then we don't get to it. So just kind of allocate the time, though we never know with our
That's
board,
tough to
because
do.
we sometimes have too many questions, so which is good.
It is, the question is definitely.
And we can all blame Brian, right, 63 slides, so we just need to, 62.
Detailed slides.
All right. I need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Vice President.
Yes, great.
I move that we adjourn open session.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Rich. All in favor? Aye. We are now adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Rich.